Hello, and welcome back to Debunking Conspiracy Theories with Madison Wykes and Riley Letterman.
The attack that took place on September 11th, 2001 is known by every American and remembered as one of, if not the worst terrorist attacks. However, a lot of people have questions about the validity of the towers collapsing and how buildings that were 110 stories high collapsed in seconds. There are public theories within the events of 9/11, including that it was an inside job, but today we'll be speaking on how the collapse of the World Trade Center was caused by solely the planes crashing into them and not an inside job with the use of bombs, and as shown by structural analysis of steel beams and the fire and heat destruction.
I would like to give some insight into the full events of 9/11. September 11, 2001 started out just like any other day in New York City, but would later become one of the most memorable days in American history. Around 8:46 in the morning, a large passenger plane struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center, striking fear into millions. The first thought in the minds of the people was that some terrible accident had taken place, or something just was simply wrong. However, this thought was promptly changed when the South Tower was hit around 9:03 that same morning. With millions of people now watching the news to see this horrid act of terrorism, a third plane struck the side of the Pentagon at approximately 9:37, all around 20 to 30 minutes apart. There was a final plane headed for the White House, this being Flight 93, but was crashed into a field 150 miles outside of Washington as it was taken back by passengers who risked and lost their lives to ensure that the plane would not hit its intended target. These attacks were all the work of Osama bin Laden and the Afghan-based terrorist group named Al-Qaeda. These attacks led to continuing conflict between Afghanistan and the U.S. Now, 20 years later, a lot of the public have suspicions.
We're going to be talking about is the possibility of the planes not acting alone and there being bombs placed in the Twin Towers before the planes hit them, showing that it was an inside job as a lot of the public speculated over the years. The main theory is that there's no way the impact of the jet caused such widespread damage 80 stories below without any other explosives, such as concussion bombs, that were supposedly detonated in the lower levels of the tower, one at the same time as the plane crash.
One of the main questions within this series is how these steel beams could have collapsed so easily. However, these steel columns were not solid. They were steel boxes in which the thickness of the steel varies, and the main reason for the collapse of the buildings were really the impact damage that was caused by airplanes, followed by the dislodged fireproofing and the large multi-floor fires that spread throughout the building. This is according to Dr. Shyam Sunder, who led and investigated the tower's collapse. However, popular theorist and scientist Stephen E. Jones disagrees with Dr. Sunder, as there were no reports of melted steel pools that were seen and pictured by multiple eyewitnesses, or I should say no reports of how they were created. Steel melts at around 3,200 degrees Fahrenheit, and Jones claims that the planes could not have generated enough heat to melt them, such as concussion bombs would, or bombs in general would. This does not correlate to the Twin Towers specifically, as according to Ascent Steel, a construction and steel company, shows that A36 steel was used in the Twin Towers, which is made up of about 98% iron. Iron's melting point is 2,800 degrees Fahrenheit.
All of this, along with the knowledge that jet fuel fires can burn up to 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit in open air, showing that molten pools created by the beams and at the Twin Towers is possible with just the jet fuel from the planes. The last and final major point theorists make is the fact that the Twin Towers collapse within their own footprint for the most part instead of falling in a certain direction, which is very common in controlled demolition.
Dr. Sunder disproves this point, as the steel beams that were used were actually weaker at the top of the skyscrapers in order to accommodate wind. Specifically, the steel varies from about 1/4 of an inch at the top to about 3/4 of an inch or 1.5 inches on the bottom. This gives perfect reason as to why the steel at the top of the towers, which was the first portion hit, would begin to collapse in on itself before bringing the rest with it.
Although many people want to believe that 9/11 was more than a terrorist attack, many of those theories are disproved with simple math and science as spoken about today. 9/11 was a horrible day for every American there and in the future, and the people should be focusing on all of the lives lost, as the collapse of those towers was not a controlled demolition or an inside job as people would like to believe.
Thank you guys for watching, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day.